Okay, so next talk is about ADF and will be presented by Mano and Ivan from Ixxus. So good luck, guys.
Is this on? What is the mute? This one?
I don't know how this works.
Testing.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm on. Cool. Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Mano, or Manolo, for my Hispanic friends. I work at Ixxus, and I've been working with Alfresco products for almost 10 years now, I think. And this is...
Hi, my name is Ivan. I am technical lead at Ixxus. I have been working with Alfresco almost 8 years. What? That's it.
So today we're going to talk about ADF, and more specifically, our experience with it. I gave a talk last year about ADF as well, so basically we're building a bit further on what we have done the last year and what we experienced. So what we're going to cover today, the first thing will be the upgrade. Of course, we started a long time ago, so inevitably we needed to upgrade. Then we're going to specifically talk about the product I showed last year, what we were working on. Then Ivan will be talking about our development process, and then hopefully we still have some time for questions and maybe answers, we'll see. So, the upgrade. I'm going to specifically focus on upgrading to ADF 2.0. If you're starting a project now or considering upgrading, then 2.0 is probably the way to go. So, to emphasize again, ADF is not an application, it is a framework. So it's basically a set of Angular components, now built on Angular 5. There's a component library online that you can check out. The URL has changed in the time, so you need to make sure that you have the correct URL. And of course, you can bootstrap a project with the Angular CLI or with the project generator that ADF provides. So this means that you're not upgrading the application. This is not like having share that you have customized and then upgrading that. You're upgrading basically a framework, a library that you use. So you're upgrading the components and the dependencies that it brings with them. So for minor versions, this probably means little work or no work at all. For major versions, it probably requires a lot of work. And this is very application specific, well, like any library upgrade. So it really depends on the application you created. But I'm going to go through the basic steps, right? So the first thing is you need to know the releases that ADF has. Mario already mentioned this in his talk today. I'm going to briefly mention it. So ADF is released on a monthly basis. So we have a major or minor release every month. There's also a weekly release, which is a beta. Right? You can recognize that from the beta tag in npm, and also from the version number that has a suffix in there. And there is also a PR release for every functionality that has been merged to master, which is recognized by the alpha tag and also a suffix in the version name. But the version number, basically, for the rest is just a semantic versioning here in this case. So the first thing that we need to do is to make sure that our dependencies, the thing that we use to build our apps, like the tools underneath, are up to date. So for ADF, we use JavaScript. We use JavaScript tooling, so we need Node.js to be up to date. For ADF, that will be Node 8 and NPM 5. If you have multiple versions of Node, which you probably have if you have older applications as well, I recommend to use a manager, like N in this case, to manage multiple Node versions. Otherwise, it can be quite a pain in the ass to manage them, right? So you see here an example with N to quickly switch between versions or update them. So that's nice. Then if you're starting a new project, you have like two options. Or you're going with the Angular CLI tool to generate and bootstrap your project, or you use the ADF project generator. If you want to use Angular CLI, which I basically recommend if you have some ADF experience because you control it all, right? Then you should be using version 1.5.x. If you want to use version 1.6, it doesn't work at the moment. Maybe that will change. But for now, 1.5 is the way to go. You can have Angular CLI installed on global level on your system or on project level. It's basically the two options that you see here. Option A is on global level, which means if you upgrade CLI, it will be upgraded for every project on your system, which is probably something you do not want. So I recommend to go with option B, which is installing it on project level, so you can still support your older projects and use older versions of the CLI tool. If you want to use the app generator, that you can do as well. It basically generates a demo app, a demo ADF app. The same thing as Angular CLI, it's basically built on top of it. It generates an Angular app and already puts the right dependencies in there for you and creates some pages, so a showcase of the components, basically. The thing to notice is that the generator has changed name. So, or you just update the generator if you already have the latest version with the name change, which would be option A, very easy to do. If you have an older version, which in our case we had, then you need to remove the older version first, and then you update, or install the new version with the new name, as you can see here in option B. If you have done that, that's great. That was great for new applications. But what if you have an older application, the application already exists, and you want to go to a newer version of ADF? Well, the first thing you need to do is upgrade the ADF packages. So the ADF packages have now changed name, so they now do not use the ng2 prefix anymore. And they also moved away from the old naming convention. So you will not see a reference to activity anymore. In the name or Alfresco, it will now be content services and process services. And be aware that all the packages that you see here are all 2.0 except Insights. That's 2.0.1, so you need to be aware of that, right? The number of packages is also downsized, has been downsized incredibly, so there are only 5 ADF packages at the moment. And these packages are listed in your package.json file, so you just update the version numbers there, or the names as well in this case, and install them, and then you should be good to go for this part. When you've done that, of course, a new ADF version also brings new dependencies. It uses a lot of libraries, and it needs to make sure that you have them installed. To do that, you need to update those libraries, or add those libraries, or remove some libraries in the package.json file, right? I recommend to use absolute versions, because by default, a lot of times the caret symbol is used, which means that the version might slightly vary, which can cause problems. So I would recommend to use absolute versions here. If you want to know the dependencies that ADF uses, and you do not have a project generated from scratch with the app generator, then you can know what they are with the npm remote ls tool. So you basically can list all dependencies from any library in npm. It will give you the list, and then you can basically put that in your package.json file. Of course, new dependencies mean breaking changes, depending on the version, of course. In our case, with ADF 2.0, you will be changing class names, imports, tag names, etc., right? So an example, material design has been upgraded. It now does not use the MD prefix anymore. It now uses the mat prefix. And also ADF 2.0 has changed tag names as well. So you need to update that as well. So it's very difficult to predict what you need to do if you update dependencies, right? But there is a lot of work involved. Luckily, the guys from ADF have created a ADF prefix updater tool, and that will do a lot of work for you. So as I mentioned before, import statements, class names, tags, CSS prefix even, are all automatically updated with the prefixer tool. You just update the packages first, like we saw before, and then you just run this tool over your project, and it will try to find all those changes and will update that for you accordingly. It will even update deprecated properties. It will not change them for you, but it will mark them as deprecated. You can see that in your diff if you use version control, which you probably should, and you can then find a suitable property as a replacement. Or maybe you can leave it out altogether, who knows. The prefix updater does not do everything. So there's still a bunch of stuff that you need to do yourself. You are the one that needs to update the package.json, the Webpack configuration, some CSS styles that need to be added. That's something that you need to do manually. When you've done that, then the last thing is upgrading your own code, right? So part of that is what we saw before, prefixes, class names, imports, etc. But you certainly also have your custom code in there that maybe interacts with those components that needs changing. You maybe have extensions or overrides that you need to manage. So you need to test all of that stuff. You need to make sure that it still works. Another thing that's also very important to note is that event names have changed since the new ADF version. So they do not start with the on prefix anymore. So it's also something that you need to do, and you will not find that out until you notice that events are not being picked up again, right? So be aware of that. And there's also an important thing that in ADF 2.0, which is very good that they've done this, they basically extracted a lot of components and made them reusable. For example, a document list had a toolbar inside of it, had pagination inside of it, which was cool. Okay, you can put it right on your page, and it has it all, but made it very difficult to reuse that. So now that's extracted out of the component. So your document list after the upgrade will not have pagination anymore, will not have a toolbar anymore, so you need to add that manually yourself. And that's are things, of course, that you will see when testing, but be aware of that. So the ADF guys also tried to add some documentation to the community pages with steps to an upgrade. So you can see an example here for 1.9 to 2.0, but they try to do this for every upgrade. So basically, a lot of stuff is documented. Make sure to look there that you do not lose a lot of time with things that are already documented for you. And the last small thing, not really a necessity, but with the new ADF version, a Webpack proxy is included in the project. So you do not need a course module installed in Alfresco content services and process services anymore. You can still use it if you want to. You can also use another proxy if you like to, but there is something default built in, and it makes life easier, so I suggest you use it. So what about all-in-one edit? So last year, I did talk about our first ADF experience, which was basically trying to port a module that we already had, all-in-one edit, to another technology, to ADF in this case. So we started out back then with a very old version of ADF, which was a beta version even. And then we tried to figure out how does this work. And then there's a release, we upgraded. So the code was less than optimal, let's say. We also, at that point, we used the activity form component. We customized it even a bit to show metadata, to edit metadata for a node. We had our custom tiny MCE component to be able to edit metadata. So basically, maybe I should mention that the goal of the tool was to be able to edit metadata while you also can see the content of the document, right? So that you have a reference. So we had a custom tiny MCE component for that to be able to also edit the content if we had some supported MIME types for that. And we used the viewer component separately to show PDFs, for example, right? So we modified some JSON to make this all work, the JSON configuration for the form component, but it was less than ideal. If you look at the user experience, of course, it was not a module that we released, it was just a proof of concept, just looking into ADF. But this was basically the result that we had at that moment in the talk that I gave at BeeCon. You had the form, and the editor was always on the bottom, which is less than optimal. We wanted to be able to position it on the side or even anywhere in the form. And if we then came into the case of a PDF, then we went to an overlay mode, which is very inconsistent, right? And basically, the whole goal of the tool was gone. You couldn't even edit the metadata anymore or see it. So there was a lot of improvement to do. So with ADF 2.0, there's a lot of new stuff. We have an improved file viewer. There are new components like file versioning, content metadata component, even besides of the activity form component. More reusable components like pagination and Fort, an upgraded Angular version and material design, a lot of stuff. So we really wanted to see if we could upgrade what we already had, clean it up, and see where we get. So Ivan will then show you what we achieved.
Thanks, Mano. Well, as part of the upgrade process, we have cleaned up the code for ADF 2.0.0. Also, now we support more MIME types than the default one for the ADF viewer component, thanks to the ADF viewer extensions, resulting in a seamless experience between view and edit. Also, we have removed the custom JSON configuration in order to standardize it. So, also it means that in the future upgrade, we don't have some potential problems. And well, to finalize, thanks to the widget component, we were able to include our beware component as part of the form, as you can see in the following slides. So if you remember, in the previous component, we had an editor below the form. Now it is well-centered, and you are able to edit your document while you are able to see your metadata of the document, which is great, and yeah, you have a better user experience and a better look and feel. I have been talking about what we did, and now I would like to talk about how we did it. What is our development process? Well, previously, we have been using multiple Git repositories to manage our different modules. But now we have moved all of them into a single repository, and that's the concept of monorepo. Before, having multiple repository means maintains a lot of configuration for the GitHub permission, create multiple pipelines in our continuous integration process, etc. Aside of that, thanks to monorepo, the large scale refactoring is easier. And well, for example, if you have to implement a feature, if you have multiple repositories, it means that you will have to do more than pull requests, because probably you will have multiple modules in different repositories. So that's not logically correct when you expect just one pull request, and that's the atomicity of commits feature. And to finalize we have a dependency management is easier now. And well, that's possible thanks to Lerna. This tool help us to manage our projects, which manage multiple modules. This is the basic structure of a project which use Lerna. Basically, we have a JSON file for Lerna, which basically configure where are our different modules. Also, we have the package JSON file. Well, basically, we just specify what is the Lerna version, and finally, the package folder where we have our different modules. And I would like to show you how Lerna works using an example. So let's say that we have a module like that, a project like that, which has different modules. Module 1, which depends on module 2, and module 2, which depends on module 3. And then we make a change in the module 3. Then, well, we do the commit and push that chain. The following step is basically publish these changes. Here is where Lerna can help us. Basically, what Lerna does is to check what are the modules which has changes, and the module which has a dependency on it. And well, that's an output from Lerna. So you see that if I make a change in the module 3, it will increase the version of it, and will create the Git tag, and also it will publish that modules into the npm package repository, and it will do the same for the module which depend on it. So that's why module 2 and module 1 were published. Okay. So, well, we have been talking about Lerna using npm, but also I would like to talk about Yarn. Yarn is an npm package manager like npm, and well, it has some interesting features like the offline mode. It means basically when you do a simple Yarn install, well, basically you install your dependencies. It will do, if you enable this mode, it will do a copy for you and will store these dependencies into your file system. So the next time when you don't have an internet connection, it will able to retrieve them using your file system. Another interesting feature is that Yarn is deterministic like npm. Basically, it means that everyone in the team will have the same node modules, having the same package JSON plus the log files. Also, Yarn will enqueue the request to avoid waterfall requests. in order to maximize the network utilization. And it will do if the request fail, it will do some retries instead of stop the whole process. Here we have a table which compare yarn versus NPM. Well, in the case of determinism, we can see that yarn lose. Basically, it is because NPM works better with their different versions. Related to the speed, we have an interesting table here below. Well, we can say that yarn has better times in order, it's faster. We can say in some cases it is 50% better. Related to the default parameter, we have a tie. That's it because, well, basically we can do an install for them without specify the command. And finally, yarn wins with the command because, well, yarn has some interesting command which can help us to manage our npm package manager, npm packages. Yarn also have a quite interesting concept, which are the workspaces. Basically, the workspaces help us to avoid to have duplicate dependencies. So imagine that we have a project structure like this. Okay, we have the root package JSON. Also, we have two modules, JSDiff module and the JSMatcher utils. This is the root package JSON, where we specify where are all different modules in the workspace sections. And also here we have a dev dependency called choke with version 2.0.0. Here we have the package JSON for the different modules that we have for the JSMatcher utils. And here, as you can see, we have some duplicate with choke dependence and the pretty formats. And they are using the same version in that case. So if we don't enable the workspaces for yarn, you will see that the pretty format and choke dependencies has been duplicated. But if we enable it, just choke has been duplicated because they use different versions. So we want our different modules keep using their own version. But for pretty format, we just have one dependence because it was able to not duplicate them. Thanks to that, we are able to save this space and also probably some time when you are downloading them. To finalize, I would like to say that we can continue using Lerna with yarn. Basically, Lerna is just a wrapper around yarn. So we can continue using that in order to manage our different multi-module projects. Well, more or less, that's it. Any question?
If you want Ivan's phone number, that's after the presentation. There's one question there. Do we have a microphone for?
Yeah, I was just wondering what your experiences are now with ADF 2. What's good? What went really fast? Was it easy to build a full application from it? And what's not as good? What could be better?
I can only summarize ADF in one word, which is awesome. No, basically, the good thing about ADF is if you already have Angular experience, then it's something that you can really, really quickly build an application with. And even Angular is not that hard to learn. Because it's just a library, right? So you plug in the components that you want to use, and the rest is all basic Angular knowledge. So I can't really say any bad things about it. If there's something that you don't like about ADF, it's probably something that you don't like about Angular, I think. But yeah, very positive experience, very fast development times. And as I said, it's a framework on top of Angular, so there are really no limitations whatsoever. The only thing that can happen, of course, is that the component that they have does not give you a feature that you want, which basically means that you implement your own component, or you try to modify theirs, which of course breaks the upgrade process in the future, right? The cool thing is with ADF 2.0 even more that there are a lot of extension points that you can use. Like for example, the viewer, you can easily plug in your own components to edit content, sorry, for certain MIME types. So it's quite flexible. So can't say anything bad about it. Sorry. I did that for you, Mario. Just make ADF the best thing ever, you know. Other questions?
Hi, so when you upgraded your application to 2.0, how long was that process? Was this a 2-day kind of thing or a 2-week kind of thing? And what was your initial experience? Because we do recognize that the upgrade could be painful depending on how much you've gone on off the rails. And we spoke last year, so I know that you guys went in early and did a few things. What was that experience like from a... I know this is something we can't really measure, but I'm really thinking about that developer experience, that feeling that you get when you're working with something. Was it frustrating? Was it super positive? Or is, oh, this makes sense because this is going to be great eventually? So I don't know if that question makes sense.
It makes sense. The thing is, of course, we came from a very old version, and we made a very big leap. So it took us some time. I can't really say how long because the project was dropped. We didn't spend a lot of time on it for a couple of months, and then we picked it up again. Can't really say how long, but I think how the upgrade process went was like expected. Especially now that you have the documentation, every version upgrade is documented. You have the prefixer that helps you. I already expected it would be work. Of course, you have a library and your custom code, so all within expectations. I was really pleased, especially the documentation, that you can really just follow all the steps. There's even an example repository with the commits. Like, okay, this was the first commit I did to update my project. Was greatly documented, so it was good. The only problem was that we made a big leap. So if you maybe follow up closer, I think that might be even very trivial to do an update. So, no, great, actually.
Other questions? If not, thank you. And if you liked it, please vote for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.